Who came to court and how was it led? Could the trial have had the impact if it didn't have all those people outside the courts? Have you seen pictures of it, ne? Of how people went to the court. There were also ordinary ANC supporters and ordinary ANC members and ordinary Communist Party members, Indian Congress members, Coloured People's Congress members, Trade Union Congress members, who were all present. Right? Many were in jail, but many were still present of ordinary members came to court. And that gave, who did it give strength to?
To the defendants.
To the people in the court. Right? You imagine there was no one in court.
No.
Winnie said to Mandela, you decided to go to jail, you fix your own business. Right? You imagine that happened. Would they be able to be so strong?
No.
Be very difficult. So, when members go to a commission of inquiry, or they go to a court, or they go on a march, that power is listened to not only by the people who lead, but that most importantly, that power is seen by your oppressor or the people who are doing wrong. Right? So it's vital for people to see. If TAC didn't have marches, what do they think? They think TAC is Mandla and Vuiseka and a few people. Right? If Free Gender didn't organize, and even though lesbians are a minority, but didn't bring out people who support lesbians, whether they're in TAC, whether they're in equal education, whether they're in the SJC, if you didn't unify with as many people as possible, but you weren't there yourself, people wouldn't think we're important. Not important in the sense of bad, but think they don't need to take your cause as important. So the fact that people were there was enormous support to the leadership, but it was also vital for the apartheid state to see that we were going down resisting. The last thing, remember the last thing we discussed was the leadership who were supporting there and the ordinary members of the organizations who were supporting. There's one other important thing that I must add of support who came. Religious leaders came. So it wasn't only the political organizations, it was also religious leaders who supported the ANC or the whole liberation movement. The person who gave evidence in support of Mandela and them was a chap called Alan Payton. And some of you will know he wrote a book called Cry the Beloved Country. And I think he won a Nobel Prize for that. You may have done it in school.
Sounds familiar.
Cry the Beloved Country. And he was an opponent of the ANC, and he was a member of the Liberal Party. And he gave evidence in support of Mandela and them. So it wasn't only ANC people who supported the Rivonia trialists. It was people across the board of all political parties who believed in freedom. And all activists who believe in freedom said this is wrong.
Like at this time, where was Dr. I think it was Dr. Kluma, like he was around back in the ANC around at the beginning, but where was
I think he died already.
Oh, okay.
He died already. I must just check my timeline. My memory's a little fading. You guys have a timeline there, but you can also research it for yourself, ne? Please do. Questions you have, research them. So then we go to international solidarity. You remember that leaflet we spoke about, Caroline Motsoaledi? That came from the British anti-apartheid movement. So what happened is, you will remember that before Mandela was arrested, he was a prisoner already. Before he went on trial for Rivonia, he was a prisoner already. Does anyone here remember what were the two charges that he was found guilty on before he came to Rivonia? The two charges were inciting a strike in 1961. right? And the other one was leaving the country without a passport to travel throughout Africa. And he traveled throughout Africa to countries like Algeria, Ghana, all the countries that were newly being liberated, to ask for support for the ANC and for MK. And many of the people said to him, many of the leaders of Independent Africa said to him, no, we don't want to support you, we want to support the PAC because you're dominated by whites. And he eventually convinced most of them that they're being ridiculous. What the ANC stood for was a non-racial democracy, and not black domination or white domination, but a place where black people have dignity, but are equal. So he came back and he was arrested because that's when he went on guerrilla training and learned how to shoot and make bombs and all sorts of stuff, and studied war, Civil War diaries. He studied theories of war, and he was caught. He was caught with his notebooks. I can't understand how you keep your notebooks. They were very stupid underground people. I can't understand how you keep. I used to have notebooks on Civil War, but I promise you, I never carried them around. I only worked on them when I was working on them, and then they went somewhere else. Right? So anyway, he carried his notebooks around, and he was caught with them. So the first set of international solidarity, the ANC then sent people like Oliver Tambo into exile. They said, you must go. He didn't want to go. They said to him, you must go so that you can set up an apparatus that will help the ANC inside. And you get support from countries around the world. So the ANC's headquarters was in Tanzania, and Tambo was based between Tanzania, Zambia, and London. And they created support for the ANC across the world. And again, they didn't just create support from ANC communist members from around the world, Communist Party members from around the world. There were people like Father Trevor Huddleston, who was an Anglican priest, who went abroad, Canon Collins, who now the Canon Collins Trust help funds EE. So there were a range of organizations, education organizations, religious organizations, trade unions, political parties who came together to support the ANC. And then there were governments throughout Africa and some European governments, but also newly independent countries like India and so on. India became one of the strongest supporters of the ANC. So Cuba, those countries who were newly liberated in the United Nations, they ensured that there was sanctions against South Africa. So the Rivonia trial gave serious backing to the liberation movements, because the PAC also benefited from it. Because if you look at the United Nations, they had the PAC, they had the ANC both there. And you'll remember, who was the first black woman to speak on behalf of South Africa at the United Nations? Maria Makeba. Maria Makeba. She spoke on behalf of the ANC on behalf of all the liberation organizations in South Africa at the United Nations.
When was that? Which year?
That was in the early 1960s. I think it was in the year of the Rivonia trial. It was the year of the Rivonia trial. So international solidarity is very important.